Back, and it's COMP305, and it's the winter 2016 term, and we're week 1, lesson 1, part 3 now. And even though it says part 2, I didn't change it to part 3 because I just copied and pasted, but I'll change it later. So we talked about Blender at length, right? And this is where you get it, blender.org, right? And we talked about a few things about the course, but we really didn't talk about Unity, which is really what we're going to do most of our work in. So I'm just going to close Blender for now. So I'm going to kind of go to Blender and quit Blender, right? It's going to ask me if I want to, have something in there. Do I want to, save anyway? No, I'm good with that. Quit anyway. And I'm going to launch Unity for the first time, right? So again, in order for you to launch Unity, you need to have a Unity account, right? Which you can sign up for free. Again, Unity 5 is available to all students, and the latest version that I have is 5.3.1. And they have regular updates for Unity, so please, if you're going to download your own version of Unity, stay on track. There's some major differences from one version to the other, right? There are some breaking changes from version 5 to version 4, right? So please notice that there's going to be some things that just don't work properly in version 4, right? Unity is a bigger download. It's about 4 gigs, right? So don't expect it to be downloaded in 2 seconds when you come into school. It's not going to happen, right? So please be prepared for it. If you're gonna get it, during school, I can't say any other way, but I recommend it. You put it on your system in front of you. If you can't and you just want to use Unity, Unity 4, it'll be very similar to this, but you won't have a menu like a project menu like this. It'll look different. Okay, let's click on New Project, right? For Unity 5, Unity 4. In Unity 5, you have an option of going 3D or 2D. Let's stay with 3D for now, right? And also, I have options to select asset packages. I don't want to select any asset packages right now. Asset packages that give us additional stuff that we can use. I don't want to do that. I want to just leave it as is, right? And I want to create a default project that I'm going to call, we'll call this COMP305, and we'll call it week, in winter 2016, and then lesson 1. And we're going to work with this one for next day as well. So next day we get together, which is, and by the way, our next day is 6:30 to 8:30 tomorrow night, right? And traditionally people have just like not shown up on that time. I'm telling you, it's really worthwhile showing up every time we have a class, because there's so much material I'm going to be giving you every single class. Even if you watch the videos, they're great for backup, but you can't ask questions. You can't solve your problems without me being there and helping you out. So please try and come to class. So again, COMP305, winter 2016, lesson 1. I'm going to click Create Project. All right, now this is going to put it in a predefined location. I have a Unity projects. I'm going to just minimize this. I have a Unity projects folder on my desktop, right? This is my Unity projects folder, right? And inside my Unity projects folder, I have a bunch of other projects, right? But for now, we have our new Unity project. And inside the Unity application, so there's a couple applications we're learning at the same time, right? One of them is Blender, right? We just learned a little bit about Blender. Today we're going to also talk about a little bit about Unity, because we're just going to touch on them. And again, I'm going to test you about this next week, right? So let's take a look. What do we have here? We have different options. Now my view might look different than yours. Yours might look something like this. And by the way, if I click on Layout and if I go to 2x3, it'll look like this, right? If I go from Layout and I hit something else, like for example, Default, it'll look like this, which is probably what yours looks like, right? Your layout is just where your panels are laid out. It doesn't affect anything in Unity whatsoever, right? It's just the way you can see things and organize your work, okay? So when I change my layout from my default layout to something else, right, that's okay. And all these panels are draggable and droppable. So if I want an example, if I want my hierarchy to be over here with my inspector as an example, I can do that, right? I can change my scene and add things to my scene and move things around, okay? For example, I really don't like my project files being down here. I don't enjoy them, right? I like my project files being in the same kind of tab or in the same line as my inspector. But there is a default one that you can use to start off with. And I recommend, instead of using this view, this default view, which is nice for starters, I highly recommend going to something like, a 2x3. So click 2x3 on your perspective here. This is your layout. And you're going to get something like this. So why do I recommend this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, it gives me more room to do things on the inspector on the side. Now, they also give you a couple of different things. There's the scene view. This is where you do all your work. Then there's the game view. This is where you play your game in testing, right? Well, I don't need to play my game right now, and I want to pull this game view over here with the scene view, so I can just take the top of this tab and pull it over here. Let's do that. And now you can see that I have a bigger scene view and a smaller game view, right? That I have to kind of click to get, right? So scene view, game view, right? These are just different views. I have my hierarchy, which, if you compare it to Blender, is like the outliner. This is all my assets that are in the outliner. Well, this is cool, but you know what? My project being way over here takes up like too much space. I want to put my project underneath my hierarchy. So let's do that. So let's take my project and drag it underneath here, right? So somehow, maybe I can make it, there it is. Maybe I can pull it so it's down here, right? This makes me so I can compress my view even more and give myself more room. I like this because I have a big, one big piece here, and everything's kind of pushed off to the side. This is the way I'm going to teach you about Unity. I want you to have this view when you start off, okay? So I have my project, which is down here, right? My project files. And I have my inspector, which is context sensitive, just like in Blender, right? And I want to add a new object, just like we did in Blender. Now remember, Blender, we manipulate and model objects. We can create beautiful things in Blender. Unity, we do not use for modeling. Unity, we use for making games and scripting. We don't do modeling in Unity, typically in the industry, right? You can download assets and modify the Unity, extend Unity to include modeling. We don't do that. We use Blender, Maya, 3D Studio Max as a pipeline and bring it into Unity, right? We don't model in Unity. So we can't, if I create a primitive in Unity, and I can do that, like a cube or a sphere or a plane, can't touch it, can't model it the same way that I can do in Blender. Let's try that. So easy way to do it in Unity 5, there's a create button here. You can actually create a new 3D object, and you can select cube, right? There it is. It appears in my menu. And if you notice, in my game, it kind of is in the middle, like this, right? Well, I don't care about looking at a game. I want to look at the scene view. Here's my scene view. Hey, look what it looks. Look, isn't that similar to what we saw before? Except for it's a Y up, not a Z up. In Blender, we have Z up. This is Y up. You can do the same thing with Unity. You can bring this up and down. You can move this around like this, but this is the Y coordinate, and this is the Z coordinate. In fact, when you look at, when you work with Unity, one thing that I want you to note is this, right? First of all, manipulating and turning things around a little bit different. You can left click on an object to select it, right? In Unity. If you use the Alt button, hit the Alt button, notice how it changes your mouse cursor so it becomes an eye, like this, right? If I do that, I can move around. I can pan around the scene with my left mouse button, only my left mouse button, right? Notice how my light source stays the same. I've got 3 objects in Unity, just like I did in Blender. My light, I've got my cube now, I added in, and I got my camera. But initially, I don't have my cube. I just have my camera and my light. That's all I have. In my hierarchy, which is like the outliner in Blender, I have all of my objects kind of outlined here, right? My main camera, left click, my directional light, which is different than a point lamp, right? And a cube. So very similar. Once you learn 3D, you kind of learn 3D in any kind of thing. When I want to manipulate things, for example, if I have my cube highlighted, and if I press the Q button, right, my Q button, I can actually pan my scene around with my Q button. Notice these buttons up here on the top left corner, right? This pans the entire scene, the Q button. This is the W button. What do you think this is? It's the E button. Key, and look at your keyboard. Q, W, E, R, T. It's all the top 4 keys on the keyboard. Give you these buttons. Q, W, E, R, T, right? Q, W, R, T. So those are the hotkeys in Unity. Q for the top, pan around the scene, right? W if I want to manipulate the object, right? E if I want to rotate the object in 3-dimensional space, right? R if I want to change its proportions. That's the one thing you can do for manipulation in Unity. You can resize an object, you can scale an object, but you can't do modeling. And I'll show you what I mean by modeling next day, because we don't have time for that today, right? Okay, so that's what Unity does. This is the hierarchy and everything. Now this object is in the scene view, and each container in Unity is a scene, right? I always have to create a scene in Unity to hold all my assets. But take a look at my project down here, right? If you look at my project, I'm just making it a little larger so you can see it. I have my assets root folder, and I want to include default folders here in Unity. By the way, you do the same thing in 3D Studio Max and Maya, right? I want to right-click here, and I want to add in or create a new folder. And there's a bunch of folders I want you to create from the get-go. So let's do it together, all right? First folder, underscore scenes. So underscore capital S for scenes, okay? Notice how it's a big folder here. I don't like that. I want my folder view to be in a list form. So I'm going to go to the slider down here on the right, and I'm going to pull it to the left like this to make it into a list view, right? So this is scenes. I'm going to keep going. Right-click, new folder. You're going to do this every time we make a new project, right? Scripts. On my screen, my scenes and my scripts are going to be up here. Let's add some other stuff. So I can also right-click down here. Right-click down here, new folder, right? I'm going to add in materials. We're going to have materials for our scene. We're also going to have textures, maybe. You know, we're not going to do it this particular time. And we're also going to have something else called prefabs, right? Prefabs. There's prefabs. I can keep going, by the way. I'm not going to do too much more. But let's leave it at this for now. So I have my scene. I want to save my scene. I have my cube. I want to rename my cube. There's two ways to do that. I can left-click here. And on the inspector, notice how there's all the properties of my cube. The position of the cube in three-dimensional space in this world, the world space, right? And the name of my cube up here. I don't want to call it cube. Let's call this, rename it player. It's my player object now, right? Notice how it changes the name in the hierarchy as well. So now my cube is no longer called a cube. It's called the player, right? And I'm just going to change my my perspective. Well, this is cool, but what do I see in the game? So if I click the game view, I don't see it. How come? My camera ain't looking at it. That's why. It's there. And I can't do anything. I can't manipulate my game world. This is what happens when it's rendered. So how do I make my camera look at it? Well, if I click my camera, so I click onto my camera, here's my main camera, look at what it's looking at. It's looking way over here, right? How do I manipulate what the camera looks at? Well, I got to move my shape by changing this view around here. I can move my shape into the camera, or I can move my camera so it looks at the shape. So let's move my shape into the camera by clicking on the shape and kind of moving it up and across, and then move my camera so I can see. Now here's a preview of what the camera sees. So if I want to manipulate my camera, I can move my camera up and down so you can see a preview of what it looks at in the scene. Otherwise, you won't be able to see the actual object in the scene. I'm just moving my camera around right now. There it is. Now when I go to my game scene, I can see my object because my camera is looking at my object. The camera is what the players and everyone else will see, how they look at it. Almost put your hands here, and this is what you see within the camera. Everything that's outside of the camera is there, but it's not rendered. It's inside the game world, but not being rendered at this time, right? So I can have stuff outside of the camera view that exists in the world, but not rendered to the scene, right? So you won't see it in the game view. Okay, so please be aware of that. There's some tricks we can do. We can put stuff off scene, right? Off the stage somewhere where you can't see it, and then bring it into the stage. Like it just materialized, but actually it was always there in the game world. You just couldn't see it, okay? So camera, there's different panels here. There's the scene view. I'm going to ask you these questions. There's the game view, right? There's this hierarchy that's like the outliner in Blender. There's the project menu, which houses all your folders, right? And then there's the inspector, which is context sensitive, depending on what I'm clicking on. So if I go into the scene view and I click on my object, my player object, notice how the inspector changes, right? By the way, every single object in Blender or in Unity has one thing that's in common, the transform. Every object in Unity has a transform component. Why? Because every object has a position and a rotation and a scale. Position, rotation, scale, right? Every time you think about that, those three things you need to know about objects in Unity and in Blender. Okay, so we're kind of over time now. I don't want to take it too much farther than this, but I just wanted to give you a preview of what it looks like. I want to save my scene now. So I want to go File, Save Scene. And when I save scene, it's going to ask me where to put it. I'm going to call this scene main. That's what we're going to call our scenes for now. And we're going to position it. And again, in Windows, you're going to have a different option. I want to position it inside my scenes folder, right? And I'm click Save. When I do that, if I click over here and I see scenes, I see that there's a main scene object that's inside my scenes folder. Each scene is like a screen for your game. So if I have a beginning like UI screen that says start, that'll be a scene. My game, level 1, that'll be a scene. Level 2, another scene. Level 3, another scene. Game over, another scene. Instructions, another scene. Each scene is its own world. You can make any different games in each scene if you want. If you want to go from one level to the other, you can transition. You can have a transition scene from one scene to the other scene, right? Scenes. Questions before we end for the day, right? Remember, day 2, that's tomorrow, Wednesday, 6:30 to 8:30. We're going to do the second piece to this, and we're going to do more things in Unity and Blender to get you oriented with the interface, okay? So please attend. And next week, we're going to do our quiz, first quiz for the week, and Lab 1, which is signing up for GitHub, is due Friday. And that's it for me, guys. Have a great day.